The first time I ever gave a speech in my ag class, I asked my ag teacher, I said, Mr. Hartfield, how will I know if I gave a good speech? And he said, well, Bryce, you'll know you gave a good speech if you knocked the shoes right off their feet. So ever since then, I've tried to make it at least a little easier so that I feel good when I'm done giving a speech. So if y'all wouldn't mind joining me, for those of us wearing these shoes with laces, we're just going to untie them to start off with. Now, for those of us wearing heels, I should say those of you wearing heels, I forgot mine at home, feel free to just kick them off. We'll just start there. We'll start on a high note. And now, if you think I'm joking, this is the point where I tell you I'm not joking. Take them off. Now, growing up in Queen Creek, Arizona, which I'm sure everybody in here knows where Queen Creek, Arizona is, right? Mm-hmm. The bustling metropolis of Queen Creek, Arizona. In all honesty, there's not a lot to do. Now, I've learned a lot about Mississippi over the past few days. Yesterday, I communicated with a possum using only a cowbell, and I think that's just about the most Mississippi thing I've ever done in my life. This morning, I learned about a thing called diller kicking. Y'all leave those dillers alone. That sounds mean. But in Queen Creek, we don't have any possums, cowbells, or dillers, so we have to make do. Now, imagine everything you have here in Mississippi, and then get rid of it, and you've got Arizona. You've got things like trees, green trees, water, humidity. Hey, but we got the heat, though. We're all there on the heat. Now, my friends and I growing up had to think of a lot of really creative ways that we would have fun considering there was literally nothing to do. My best friend Tyler and I would spend our summer days walking around in the 120-degree heat of the Sonoran Desert hoping for a miracle. Now, there was one such day in which we were looking for that miracle, and we had our fingers crossed. It was about mid-July. The sun was beating down, and we were walking across the hot desert, hoping and praying that we might find one thing to do. Now, on that day, as we were walking, we looked out on the horizon, and we saw something. Now, you may want to call it divine intervention, if you will, but as 8-year-old boys, we sure got a blessing on that day. Now, like I said, we don't have many trees where I live, so therefore, I don't know a lot about trees. But as we looked out onto the distance and saw a clump of trees, I knew that there was something that was not right about these trees in particular. You see, these trees in particular had a little bit of a shine to them, if you will. Like I said, I don't know a lot about trees, but I know that most all of them I've seen do not shine. So as we made our way closer to these trees, that shine got brighter and brighter under the hot desert sun. As we got close, our hearts began to race with what discovery we saw. That discovery was the ugliest, most disgusting, but beautiful, rusty shopping cart. Now, like I said, we don't have a lot, and at that time, we didn't have a Walmart, we didn't have a Target, we didn't even have a little grocery store within about 15 miles of where we were. So like I said, call it divine intervention if you will, but I have no idea where this rusty shopping cart could have come from. Maybe it got blown in with the wind, or maybe the pioneers brought it west with them. Either way, I knew on that day that I and my best friend were going to have a good day. So we pulled the shopping cart out of the clump of trees and began to push it across the desert. Now think of the opening of Lion King, right? We're walking against the sun, shopping cart in hand, and the ideas are working through our heads. Now we're thinking about all the possible ways that we could utilize this shopping cart to be the best day of summer so far. But we need to take a pause and talk a little bit about Tyler. Now, Tyler, ever since we were little, has known that he wants to fly. Me, on the other hand, have known since I was little that I do not want to fly. It seems like every chance that Tyler got, His feet were leaving the ground. Even the most simple things that he and I would do required him to make it into the air. Let's take, for example, the trampoline. Now, we had a trampoline at our house, and even though Tyler lived next door, they didn't have a trampoline, so therefore he would come over to my house. Now, myself, I was perfectly content jumping on the trampoline. That's what they're designed for. Tyler, on the other hand, was not content. He had to take the trampoline, and we would push with all of our might up against the house, go around to the other side of the house, climb up onto the hay bales, get on top of the roof, and jump off the roof onto the trampoline, then therefore launching ourselves even higher into the air and usually onto the grass. It always seemed like he had to have his feet off the ground. Now, with our shopping cart, it was no different. Tyler looked at me, and he had that look. I knew that this look usually didn't mean anything good. Tyler looked at me, and he said, "I know what we could do." So, we began to push the cart towards what we would call the hill. Now, the hill was where all of our older brothers would take their bikes, and they would go flying down this dirt hill and find a ramp at the bottom. They would then jump their bikes up over the ramp, go up to the top, and do it like little hamsters on a wheel. Now, as we got closer, I began to think about what we could possibly be using the shopping cart to do at the hill. The biggest reason we avoided the hill is, like I said, our brothers were there, and whenever we went to go hang out with our brothers, it usually didn't end well. But as we got there, we realized we were brother-free for the day. Tyler began to push the shopping cart up the hill. So still in my brain, I've never been too quick, I was thinking about what could we possibly be doing with this shopping cart? Then we got to the top of the hill. Tyler hopped inside, looked at me and said, "Well, get in." I said, "Well, no." And he said, "Dude, come on." I was like, "No, I can already see where this is possibly going. There's only one direction to possibly go from here, and it's not a good one." But me being me, I succumbed to peer pressure a few seconds later. So I hopped into the shopping cart, and I could already begin to feel my palms sweaty, wheeze-neek. My mom doesn't often cook spaghetti. Now, Tyler, sitting at the front of the cart, held on and began to slowly push us forward. Now, as the shopping cart went off the top of the hill, it began to pick up speed, slowly working towards our imminent death. Now, as that shopping cart went flying down the hill, something began to slow down. And by something, I mean everything. I closed one eye. Through the other eye, I saw the shopping cart hurling towards this dirt ramp. Now, at this point, as we got closer to the dirt ramp, I was in the fetal position in the very back, eyes shut, praying that whatever was about to happen, I would be going where I need to go. As the shopping cart hit the dirt ramp, things went real slow. At this point, I opened my eyes to see my best friend Tyler standing at the very front of the shopping cart, arms wide open. Celine Dion is playing in my head. He's just ready. Me, on the other hand, was not. Still in the fetal position, screaming my lungs out, I closed my eyes, and then it happened. See, on that day, Tyler had what I would call a state fair experience. How many of us have been to the state fair? Now, my state fair, we have this thing. I don't know what it's called, to be honest with you. Now, you put on this Velcro suit, right? And there's another Velcro wall. And you jump, and you jump, and you jump, and then you jump, and you stick. And then somebody has to come peel you off. And it's kind of awkward, and you feel like you're really out of shape. Okay. Now, Tyler, like I said, we don't have trees in Arizona, but what we do have is a cactus. See, Tyler met what we call the Saguaro Cactus. While they are tall and beautiful, they are also covered in razor-sharp needles. See, as Tyler went flying through the air, his weight in the front of the shopping cart began to tip it, launching me into the sand and him into the cactus. Now, laying in the sand, I brushed it off my eyes, pushed the shopping cart off my back. As you know, I looked like a rusty Walmart turtle. got up out of the sand and looked over to see him laying face down. At this point, I had to get all my limited knowledge of CPR at the age of 8, run over, pull my friend over to find that he was laughing. We got the shopping cart and started to head for home. The entire way back, Tyler pushed the shopping cart. I pulled the saguaro needles out of him, covered in blood, and he could not stop smiling. Because like I said, to Tyler, it seemed like his attitude was always determined by the altitude that he could reach. While we never took that shopping cart down the hill, Tyler's lesson has translated into so many ways in my life. And there's a story about somebody in my hometown who has flipped that idea around. This young boy was born the last of 7 children. As he was in his mother's womb, we'll say, his brothers were more than excited. Because when you have about 6 boys, you start to look forward to all the opportunities for athletics. I mean, that's almost a full basketball team, right? That's almost 8-man football. So they began to come up with all these ideas that once their younger brother was born, he would fulfill all of their dreams. He would be the final one, because at 7, y'all need to stop. But he would be the final one that they would be able to hang out with, play sports with, and most of all, they would be happy to just have another brother. Now, as it got closer to his arrival, that excitement grew and grew and grew. When he was born, he was everything that they had dreamed of. But after a few short weeks after his birth, they began to notice a slight difference. Now, if you take this young boy and compare him to another child over his first few years, you would realize that he was just a little bit smaller. Now, for athletics, being small isn't always the best. His parents began to grow worried over time and found that, unfortunately, he was facing a wide variety of medical issues. The primary one being that he lacked the ability to grow in a lot of ways. He had acid reflux, which meant that every time he tried to eat and gain those crucial nutrients that a young boy needs to grow, he would often lose them. Now, because of this, a hard decision was made to have a feeding tube put into his stomach so that he could get the nutrition he needed every day. While that may sound like a positive solution, the feeding tube brought its own challenges. It would often wear right above his belly button. It would get really raw and sore. And his brothers began to lose hope for all the dreams that they had had for him. Being connected to a tube all day long basically meant it was impossible to play any sports, go outside, or even roughhouse like brothers do. So over time, they began to become frustrated with themselves and feel like they were selfish for wanting their own brother, when in fact, in a way, they had lost the opportunity to have one. Now, over time, it didn't seem like things were going to change. Sure, things were getting slowly better, but there was one tradition that started that changed it all for them. Now, in a household of 9 people in total, mornings were pretty hectic. It seemed like as all the brothers would get ready in the morning, one thing would always happen. As they would come down the stairs and get ready, they would get their breakfast, they would get all their bags ready, they would hear something first. Now, early in the morning, before anybody else was awake, the youngest boy would be hooked up to his feeding tube. That feeding tube was on a machine that was hooked onto a cart. So every morning as they were getting ready, they would hear the cart begin to squeak, the wheels coming around the corner. First, they would see the top of the cart. Then they would see a little bit more of the cart. Then they would see a little bit more. And then finally, they would see him. Usually, he wasn't wearing a shirt because of the feeding tube. You would hear the pitter-patter of feet coming around the corner. He would walk up to you with the cart. He would look at you, and he would smile. Now, because of all of his health issues, he didn't have any teeth at that time, so he'd give you that old man without his dentures kind of smile. He would smile, probably say a few words, then head back in and lay down. They would get all their stuff, rush out the door, go to school. Every single one of them, all 6 of them, would get a smile. Now in the afternoon, they knew the same thing would happen. They would come in, get off the bus, come through the front door, and they would find him, his cart, the pitter-patter of feet, and a smile. For them, it took a long time to realize what that actually meant. See, for them, it meant that they had to usually pat him on the head and head on their way. They had all these other things that they were worried about in their head. What do I have ahead of me today? But for him, what it meant was standing up. And yeah, standing up does not sound hard, but when you're connected to a tube that's constantly pulling on one of the most painful spots that you've got, it's hard. So how do you smile? How do you get up every morning and smile to those people around you who may not always appreciate it? Yeah, there were days in which they didn't know what the future held for their younger brother. But today, my youngest brother, Garrett, is doing more than fine. And he's taught us a lesson in which we have grown so much as a family, and I have grown so much as an individual. See, he had his feeding tube taken out. He now has a scar right above his belly button. He tells people that he was shot. He's never been shot a day in his life. But what Garrett taught us was the exact opposite of what Tyler had taught me. See, Tyler said that his attitude determined on the altitude that he was at. But Garrett was dictating the altitude that each of us would have because of his positive attitude. How do you smile on the worst days? How do you smile when you are not appreciated for what you've done to get to that smile? There's something I like to do every single morning that I think we will all love to revisit now, and that involves these shoes. Now, with my shoes, every single time I take them off, I like to untie them. Now, beforehand, that would have drove me insane, because that means one thing. Every morning when you wake up, you've got to tie your shoes, and now it's much easier to just slip them on. But for the sake of this, we will tie our shoes. Now, every morning when I wake up, I start with my right shoe, so join me in tying the right shoe. As we tie our right shoe, let's consider to ourselves, what is going right in my life? Currently now, I'm really enjoying life. I've fulfilled my dream of being able to serve you all as a National FFA officer. I've got wonderful friends and family, and you all put a smile on my face every single day. There are plenty of things going right for me. But what's going right for you? And then we head over to our left shoe. And as we tie our left shoe, let's consider to ourselves, what is left for me to fix? Maybe for you, it's changing your attitude. Maybe for you, it's calling that friend who you haven't talked to in a long time. Maybe for you, it's telling your mother that you're thankful and that you love her. There are plenty of things left for me to fix. But what's right and what's left for me to fix is easy to say, but it's even harder to do. Because what you have to find is what's in the middle. And the middle is your attitude. There is one thing that you will always have control of in your life, and that is your attitude. Throughout my travels as a national officer, I've heard so many people tell me that there is a certain deck of cards that they have been dealt in life, and I don't buy that. If you can bring me a deck of cards and say, these are the cards that I have been dealt in life, and I cannot change them, I will owe you a large sum of money. Because at the end of the day, the only thing holding you back is your attitude. There have been so many opportunities in my life where I got the chance to say pass or fail, try again, or quit. When you choose the positive route, you will grow positively. Because success is not the goal. If success was the goal for all of us, every single one of us would be failures. Your attitude does determine your altitude. And there's one thing that I would like to leave with you today, and that's something that through my travels as a national officer has really opened my eyes. Early on in the year, I gave this exact same speech, and I said something in there along the lines of, I love you all. Now, being in the ag world and in the FFA world, love is an odd term. You know, at the end of the day, we're the rub some dirt on it, get over it kind of crowd, right? So love seems like, ooh, don't say love. You know, the ladies are like, oh my God, he loves me. And then the guys out there are like, no. But at the end of the day, I will say it to you all that I truly do love you. And yeah, I'm sure somebody out there is thinking in their head right now, you have no idea who I am. We haven't even met. How could you say that you love me? And I will tell you right now, try me. Every single one of you has value within our organization. And if you've ever doubted that for a second, take it from me now in saying that you are not only valued and loved, but you are wanted and needed. Because yes, at the end of the day, while your attitude does determine the altitude you will reach in life, you will go nowhere if you can't first love yourself and allow yourself to love others. Thank you all very much.